Hello, my name is Peregrine, and the world of Overwatch is shockingly well explored. When they said a global game, they really weren't joking. We have maps, characters, and stories from all over this big blue marble of ours. However, there are still important places that have gone under the radar, most likely due to being afraid to cover the concept or a lack of interest. One place I want explored in a story or a hero is South Africa. South Africa is one of the most contentious places on Earth, second to only Israel-Palestine. The country has an obscene amount of blood on its hands, and despite apartheid ending decades ago, the country still suffers heavily from injustices for the native population, and still has a very blatant race-based class system. However, the world of Overwatch is set in 2080, which means a lot of time, and the world has been given more time to change, and with several global level events, I could imagine a much more undivided and united world. So how exactly has South Africa changed in the world of Overwatch? I could imagine that the Omnic crisis has united all ethnic groups, however I could also see a world in which how Omnics being a treated post-crisis, reopening a lot of old wounds from the past. Or maybe, just like Numbani, South Africa is an Omnic sanctuary state, because the current South African people and government know better, more than anyone else, how damaging segregation can be for people. When it comes to Australia in Overwatch, all we really have is Junkertown and the Outback in general. However, not all of Australia is like that, as noted by the Sydney Lucio Ball Arena, where the coastal areas of Australia are still relatively normal. Or, well, at least as normal as you can be for a country who is ruled by a guy who shit himself in McDonald's. However, the relationship between the Australian government and Junkertown is completely unexplored. Does Junker society regularly affect day-to-day life in Australia? Can Junkers come to Melbourne for healthcare? Is Junkrat even legally an Australian citizen, or is Junkertown an autonomous state? And if not, why has no one intervened? In fact, in general, why has no one intervened? Junkertown has no education system, no proper healthcare system. Why is no one stepping in to save these children that are dying at birth? These are questions that need answering, hopefully in a future season of the story going forwards. I could see Australia getting an entire fucking season for itself, just like we've had with Japan and South Korea. I want to know how Australia is doing with these giant fucking irradiated monsters out in the wildlife. Although, come to think of it, Australia is probably used to having giant irradiated monsters in the wildlife. Central Africa is part of the world that people tend to forget about. Places like the Congo, the Central African Republic, and Cameroon are all countries that modern media ignores, while containing different cultures, ideals, and massive, massive amounts of rainforest that is basically a treasure chest of what life on Earth has to offer, with it holding reportedly a fifth of the world's animal and plant life down there, which would make it a crucial place for Overwatch, with UN backing, to create an eco-point to maintain biodiversity and hold key areas for combating climate change. I could see Vendetta's Talon attacking an eco-point like this as a distraction, or an attempt to destabilize Africa, which from what little we've seen in the Overwatch universe seems to have somewhat stabilized from its unfortunate yet profitable position in our world today. This is a complete tangent, but one problem I've always had with the current, liberal Hollywood writing style is that when addressing Africa, things like Overwatch and Marvel tend to create stupid utopia cities like Numbani or Wakanda, which create new, very westernized cultures for Africa, where everything is hunky-dory and going just as well, if not better, than the rest of the world. Whereas in reality, even in 2080, Africa will still probably be behind the rest of the world, due to the circumstances it's been put through, like the knock-on effects of slavery and colonization, and the forever wars that are currently being forced on it by the military-industrial complex. Personally speaking, I would like to see a more realistic version of Africa, one that is doing better than it currently is, but is still flawed. The way in which a future Africa is portrayed in Hollywood media is very pandering, whitewashed, and disingenuous, similar to the whole shebang with making the Little Mermaid black. It's all very fake and disingenuous and very putting a band-aid on it. It's representation in name only, it's not proper representation. Wakanda and Numbani come off as very whitewashed, but when you point that out, you either get called ungrateful for the representation if you're black, or racist if you're not. Like, for example, the idea of Nigeria, where Numbani is, becoming a safe haven for Omnics is a very strange choice that doesn't seem very realistic. Nigeria as it is today is wildly hostile to minorities, such as the LGBT, with gay marriage being a crime and punishments that range from 12 years in prison to being literally stoned to death, and also a place where mental health conditions are not taken seriously, with the country reportedly only having 350 trained psychiatrists for a country of 200 million. So unless something crazy is going to happen in the next 60 years, it doesn't feel realistic for Nigeria to become a progressive enough place to welcome an entire new race of minorities that aren't even fucking human. It would be nice to have a map that represents where Africa probably would be in 2080. A little behind, a little hostile, but seen as one of the planet's last bastions for biodiversity and a hub of education in conservation for future generations. In a similar situation to this, actually, I've included Brazil, but like the forest areas, like the Amazon rainforest. We've seen the city of Rio de Janeiro, we have a map for it, but the Amazon rainforest is again one of the treasures of the world. It's one of the most important places on Earth when it comes to combating climate change, and a place like that needs an insane amount of protection from hostile forces, and just like Central Africa, would be an incredibly logical and important place to house an eco point, to fight off against logging and poaching. Or maybe, since the dissolution of Overwatch, the eco point has been abandoned, and we're trying to take it back from a terrorist cell, or just nature in general. I don't know, I just want more maps other than city, or factory, or city, but this time with brown people. This last one is a bit of a cop-out because I have no reason to put it here other than my own personal bias. I have a bit of a fixation on Singapore for some reason. The country just fascinates me. The entire country essentially min-maxed into being the world's hospital, and it fucking worked, holding records for longest life expectancy for a while, and is still going really strong today. Its politics is really odd, because it's essentially a dictatorship, but it's a weird line of soft power where the country is still considered relatively free, even though it's a dictatorship. I don't know. Personally speaking, it's just a bit of a self-fixation, like it's just for me. But how has this country developed in the world of Overwatch? It's been a few years since, today, so has its other industries evolved in line with healthcare? I also find it odd to not at least have a map there, considering Juno is half Singaporean, Echo is essentially entirely Singaporean too, due to her personality banks stemming from Mina Liao, plus the arrests of Doomfist by Tracer, Winston and Genji occurred there too. But, other than that, I'll call this video here. Those are my wishes for new places in Overwatch. Let me know in the comments if there's any places in our big wide world that you would also like Overwatch to explore. And of course, as always, as I am legally required to do, I would like to thank my eggs. Cameron Wilson Fan, Cherry Balls, Slater Rex, The Behapsy, Waffless, Despair, Lord Greycoat, Gothic Dino, and Mainkeeper. Thank you for your continued support.